We're happy to bring you this session, courtesy of funding from the BC Provincial Ministry of Agriculture and Food through the Sustainable Canada Agricultural Partnership. I would like to start by recognising that we're hosting this session on all of the unceded and sovereign Indigenous territories across the province, known colonially as BC. And also this country known colonially as Canada. I'm currently hosting as an uninvited guest on the territories of the Leeward and the Statliam nations. So I'd like to acknowledge these First Peoples and the rights that they should have to these lands that we're on. I wanted to let everybody know that I'm recording the session. If you're going to be asking questions and you don't want to be recorded, just please let us know in the chat and I will make sure that we edit you out when we share the links. I am going to launch a quick poll, 2 questions. Let me just launch that right now. If everybody who is participating can just answer those 2 questions over the course of the session, that would be great, super helpful to us. And then we'll get started. The format is going to be 4 presenters. Each presenter is going to speak for roughly about 15 minutes with a chance for questions afterwards. And then we can do another question. We can open up to questions and discussions at the end of the session if everybody wants to. If you have questions while the presenter is speaking, you can either put them in the chat. If you can start that question with the word question, just so I can sort of separate who's asking a question and who's just commenting. That would be fantastic. And we can save those questions to the end of when a presenter is speaking, or you can put your hand up at the end of a presenter. Their presentation. Okay, so let's get started. I am going to hand it over to Charlotte from Naïo Technologies. Let me just pop her into a spotlight mode. Hold on one moment. Okay, thank you, Charlotte.
Hi, wow, that's a spotlight, definitely. I can see my face on screen. Thank you very much, Sarah, for the opportunity, and thank you everyone for being here as well. Yeah, feel free, Sarah, to interrupt if the sound is not good, or if the presentation is not right or anything like this. I'm just going to share a few slides, maybe just a bit of intro on myself. So I've been working for Naïo for a bit more than 1.5 years now. And I'm in charge of partnerships and development. I am based actually in France, as you may tell. Sorry again if the accent is a bit strong or if some words doesn't come right. Sometimes it can sound a bit funny. So let me share my screen now. Can you see my screen? Sarah,
yes.
maybe? Yeah, okay,
yes.
great. Super. So just, yeah, maybe a quick insight of what we do here and the first slide with the 4 robots we have that we developed and market. But just before that, maybe just a bit short intro of the company and a short intro on the full range of electric tool carriers afterwards. So just a bit of context. I think there is like the main 3 challenges that we encounter when we talk to, or when farmers come to us, and when we talk to farmers, sorry, what they tell us about the reason why they reach out would be the first one, the physical strains they would like to reduce. Second comes, let's say, the use of the fact that they need to use less chemicals, for example. And I say that the main one I encounter personally would be the labor shortage. That would be like the 3 main reasons really that I come across when I talk to farmers. Adding to that, of course, there is a global context where, of course, farmers need to stay competitive while feeding more people. I think we can all agree on this. And again, I just put some few numbers here where we need to produce more food than in the past, and of course the fact that again there is the need or the need to reduce pesticide. And again, labor shortage crisis that we encounter, no matter if we talk about, I would say on my case, if I talk to vineyard owners or specialty crops, vegetables growers. And so at Naïo, what do we do? Just a bit of background maybe. So we develop and market 100% electric and autonomous tool carriers or robots. We are based originally in Toulouse, in the south of France. We also have a subsidiary in Salinas, California, as well. We've been here since 2011, actually, which doesn't sound that old, but in the robotic industry, we are one of the, if not the, one of the pioneer in the industry. And we have mainly 4 robots at the moment. They all have names. We have Oz, I think is the one that you see on the right. We have TED, this is a straddling robot that we'll see for vineyards. We have Orio, the one, or Orio, depending on where we are actually on the planet. Orio that works mainly on beds, so let's say bigger scales vegetable growers. And finally, we have Joe. Joe is a crawler, and this one will work well on small trees, for example, or narrow vines, such vines that we have in France, for example. We all build and assemble our robots from France, and before we ship anything, we control and test everything in our headquarters in Toulouse, and you're all more than welcome to come and visit if you are in Europe. We have today around 450 robots working on the fields or again in vineyards across the world. We do that thanks to our distribution partners that can be either dealerships or distribution partners or distributors. And we are present in roughly 20 countries, including North America, South Africa, quite a lot of countries in Europe as well. The majority of our markets right now is in France because originally it has been based here, but we are expanding and for example, in the US, we have the base in California, as I was saying, but also we work with the partners in the Midwest. So different market sizes. We are definitely not anymore on the prototype phase, as you can imagine, but more in the industrialized one. Although we have a strong team internally that we call the lab, and the lab will be working on specific project or specific use case when there is a specific need somewhere to develop a specific prototype, depending on the needs of the partners as well. But there is possibility to make tailor-made, let's say, solution. Now the range of robots. So our range of robots, they all rely on the same base. We have one common base to all the robots we developed. Is that, as I was saying, they're all electric and they're all autonomous and they all run on GPS RTK, which means that we have 2 centimeters precision, and I put, I think, 1 inch, so it should be almost that, I think. The idea behind the robots is that they really work like electric tool carriers in the sense that they are versatile enough for different kind of tools and attachment to be, different kind of tools or implement to be attached on the units. So today we mostly focus on soil cultivation type of tasks, So mechanical weeding, seeding to make the furrows, these kind of tasks. And tomorrow, as you can imagine, again, we'll be able to complete plenty of different tasks. As I was saying, 100% electric. So they run on just general normal out plug that you can find in your warehouse, I would say. We are quite known for the user experience part, because although we talk about robots, they're quite easy to handle. We provide training and extensive training depending on the unit and so on. But we also provide support to make sure the robot works. For example, on Orio, and we will see it maybe in a bit, there is 4 wheels, and the 4 wheels are 360. So it's really easy to put the tools in the middle and drive the robot just for it to fit the tools. Oh, sorry, and something I haven't mentioned regarding the versatility of it. At the beginning of Naïo, we started to create our own tools, but kind of realized quite fast that there have been people that have been doing it for quite some time, and they are definitely the experts on their topic. So right now we rely on different suppliers and tool suppliers for the tool part. So we work with them to integrate their tools on our robots. And because they are more and more interested in automation and this kind of units, we do receive quite a lot of interest from them as well. So we rely on their expertise and knowledge to do that. So we work with quite well-known tool suppliers, such as Cult, for example, Hack, Treffler, all kind of quite well-known suppliers across the world. So we do have tools that are kind of Naïo approved that we can sell directly from our catalog. So the range, the 2 first robots I want to show you, it's Ted and Joe. That's the robots that are dedicated to vineyards. Something I haven't mentioned is that I will be able to send you the presentation afterwards. So don't feel the rush to read all of it. I'll send you afterwards with some tech specification as well if you are interested. So we have 2 robots mostly for vineyards and tree nurseries. Ted is the straddling one. And the idea, you will see it in the video in a bit, is that there is 2 toolbar on each side of the robot, and it's where you will attach a different kind of implements for soil cultivation, so at the bottom of the vines. Joe on the right side, it's a crawler, and you see the same principle. So you have the toolbar at the back of the robot, and then the toolbar can be lifted, and you attach the different implements in the back. Again, they all run on GPS, RTK, and electric energy. And then the two other robots we have, mostly for vegetables, specialty crops, aromatic herbs, this kind of crops, are Oz and Orio. They really fit different markets. Oz is mostly for small-scale farmers, like, for example, tunnels. And that would be up to, let's say, 5 to 10 hectares. Again, same principle. You have the toolbar in the back. You'll be able to attach the tools and then let the robot go. Second, on the right side, you have Orio. Orio is the robot that will be able to work on beds. So you will be able to put the implements in between the wheels and let the robot go. Something I think also that is quite important to mention is that there's 2 steps where it's quite important to spend some time on, is the mapping. That would be one of the big steps, because, as I said, it relies on GPS RTK, but you need to map. There's different technique of mapping. Either you can map with the robot if you want to seed with the robot. You don't have to. You can also seed with your tractor and then weed with your robot. But it's important to spend time on doing the mapping and to have the best precision possible. And the second, I would say, task, but just like any tractors, I would say, would be to set up the tools, especially in the vineyards. I think there's people here from the vineyard industry. We need to spend time on making sure the tools are well set up. And then when this is done, you can just follow the robot for one round and then let the robot go. Then this is just a small summary of what I just said. So we are present on the 5 continents, quite many hours in operating the robot as well. We are CE and FCC certified. We provide a 5 years warranty as well. And we are 100% made in France. And now I just want to share some videos. So let's see if I can do that. This is Oz. I don't think we need the sound. Can you see the video running as well? Yes, okay, thank you, Sarah. So that's the little Oz. Little but quite effective. Here, for example, we put a seeder in the back. So we work with Ebra here, but we also work with Terra Donis, for example. Here, though, so it did the seeding. Here are some hoeing blades as well. And it will create or help the farmers focusing on other type of tasks while the robot is doing this kind of job. So mainly, really, the really high value, I would say, is to gain time, either for the farmers to spend time with this family or to spend time on focusing on higher value type of tasks. So here, I think we put some discs. Feel free also to do some digging on YouTube. There is plenty of YouTube videos of the robots, but again, I'll send you the different links. That would be for Oz. To show you, oops. All right, Joe. Oh, interesting. Sorry about that. So that's Joe. This one operates in vineyards. Originally, it has been created for the vineyards in France that are in Champagne and that are quite known to be more narrow than other type of vineyards. But then we also realized that this is the kind of robot that can be very useful in crops like blueberries, for example, because it's really compact. As you saw, it fits in a van, for example, and it's a bit higher up, so it will catch the signal better. And this one can handle a slope of, for example, around 25%. There's really few logistic because of its sizes as well. Mostly it has been used to do the work in between the rows, but we also can imagine putting some intervines on each side of the robot to weed again at the bottom of the trees or the vines. Something you'll see on all the robots, on the 3 big units, is that they have mainly, let's say, 2 GPS. You have the GPS RTK, which is the orange box, and then there is some kind of boat antenna that will let the robot knows where it is front, where it is back, because the robot is completely blind. So just for it to situate itself in the space. something maybe I haven't mentioned also before. Naïo is about 80 people. And how we do it, so the headquarters are in France, but we also split the different countries or where we are present with someone from the sales department and someone from the customer success part. So we'll be able to provide training and support to the final customer that way. Final customer and our distribution partner. Ted, the straddling robot. Oh, sorry again about that. Okay. Oh, and about the ad, that must be in French, so it's not even very interesting. Okay. So the straddling robots, as I was saying, on this one, we work with tool suppliers such as Boisselet, for example, Suslikov, and it's really like you can attach a lot of different kind of tools that we would be called passive tools, so that we'll be able to work with the speed of the robots. But you can also work with electric tools. That would be, for example, electric intervine from Boisselet. That would be, for example, an option. And the idea is that, as you can see, there is 2 toolbars on each side. Oops, just put it from the beginning. And the two on the toolbar, it's versatile enough for the farmers to attach a lot of different kind of tools for soil cultivation. And finally, Orio. Just move a bit. Okay. So I think this video actually has been shot in somewhere in France. There is 2 different tools on each Orio. On the one on the right, there is a Trefler harrow, and on the one on the left, there is hoeing tools from Kelt. Yeah, kind of same principle. It can goes to like about 5 kilometers per hour, and the idea is that it's lighter also than a tractor, so it can enter the field sooner. It runs fully autonomously. We released at Agri-Tech some weeks ago. Oh. So sorry, we released at Agri-Tech some weeks ago something that we call augmented autonomy, which means that we can leave the robot in the field by itself. This is possible thanks to different kind of safety setup on the robot itself, but also on geofencing and some approval from our team prior to that. And just leave 1 more minute of Orio, and then I'll take any question. I think the quality is not that great, but again, I'll send the video afterwards. This is where you'll see the tools going down. And then the robot will go. Yeah. And I think that's about it for me for now.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. Excellent. I'm just going to open it up to questions. It looks like there's one in the chat, but if you just want to put your hand up too, that's also completely acceptable. Someone's asking in the chat, what is the dimension of the headland?
So the headland is the end of the line, right? It's yeah, the end of the row. Okay, depends on the unit. For the biggest unit, it's about about like 6 meters, I think.
That's how much is needed at each headland for the Orio, is that right?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, for the big units. For small unit like Oz, you only need like 3 meters, for example. Yeah, and then it also depends on the size of the tool.
Steve, you have a question.
Yeah, I was just wondering what kind of availability we're going to have in Canada in the next year or two.
Oh, well, it's possible to have a unit, maybe not tomorrow, but in the next few weeks.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we already have some units that are in Canada. We have some, we have TED, Oz, that's for sure. Orio, I think they're all there actually.
Wow. And who is the dealer?
So we work for the vineyard part. We work with Vichy Saint-Port.
Okay.
And as far as I know, we're still looking for one for the special crops vegetables. And we also work with a very great partner that that's called Agri-Tech. Chuck Agri-Tech also that works in Canada.
Can you put some links in the chat for those?
Sure, I will.
Yes. Yeah.
I will also send all the participants the links to connections with all the presenters, but also to any of the reps in Canada as well, any pertinent links. Carnell, you had a question.
Yes, one thing for TED, is there any height limit for the canopy, how high it can be? You have to design your vineyard to use it, or it be adjustable, you can go up and down?
So it's not adjustable, but we have 3 different sizes for TED. And the higher up, the highest, sorry, it's 2.35 meters.
255. Okay. And what's the price on it?
The robot, it really depends on because we sell the tools as well, it's gonna depend on the setup, on the tools, on the number of batteries and so on you have. But the units, they goes from around, let's say, I have the price in euros, sorry, but that would be around like 35,000 euros to 100,000 euros.
Wow.
Roughly. So from Oz to TED Orio.
I can also connect you with Clement Granger, who is based in Quebec and is the Canadian Naïo representative, who can answer all of those questions as well. I'll send that in an email at the end of the session. Christine in the chat is asking, similar to what Carnell is asking, but what are the costs of the unit approximately? Christine, specifically, I mean, maybe it would make sense just to give a rough idea of costs on the 4 different machines.
Yeah. So again, sorry, I have the price in my head in euros, but again, it depends on the tools and the different setup. But Oz, for example, would go from 30 to 40. 40,000. 40,000. Sorry, at the end of the day for me, I'm struggling with numbers right now. Yeah, for 40,000. Yeah, around that price. Joe would be more between 100 and 150. And TED and Orio, which are the biggest units, are mostly around 200, 250.
I actually have some quotes. They might be a little bit out of date, but I can send those on for the Oz. They might be a year old now, but for the Oz, the Orio, and the TED models within Canada.
And I can also send you the price list afterwards, no problem. Of course.
Thank you.
I'll put it in the presentation.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any other questions for Charlotte? There'll be opportunities at the very end also to interact with the presenters, but we might move on now we've got Mark Weber, who is the FarmDroid FD20 representative in Canada. He works for FrontLink Inc. And I'm just going to pop a spotlight on him. Give me 1 second. There we go. Thank you so much, Charlotte.
Thank you.
Take the spotlight off of you. Okay, great. So welcome, Mark. Thank you so much. If you want to share your screen, down the bottom, you'll see a share screen icon. If you do that, then bring up your PowerPoint. It'll bring it to the screen. Perfect. Excellent. And then I'm just going to make sure you're not muted.
Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Can hear you loud and clear. Perfect.
Perfect. Good morning, everybody. My name is Mark Weber. I'm with FrontLink, and I'm excited to share with you a game-changing innovation in agriculture, the FarmDroid FD20. First, let me introduce FrontLink. As a distinguished family-owned company, we take immense pride in being the importer and distributor of FarmDroid, Dieberg, Einbach, and Stoll. At FrontLink, customer satisfaction lies at the heart of our business. Our commitment to excellence is reflected in our team and highly knowledgeable technicians who provide reliable support. Our well-equipped warehouses in Ontario and Quebec ensure that we maintain substantial inventory parts and whole goods, guaranteeing swift and efficient service. Before we explore the solutions, let's acknowledge some of the challenges the farmers face today. Obviously, labor shortages are something that we have all been kind of dealing with. Rising costs on inputs, equipment, fuel, housing of workers. The need for sustainable practices is what we're looking for. This video here is going to explain our FarmDroid very well, and then from there we can kind of talk from there. So let's
reading robot. It was this. Hi. My name is Eddie Peterson, and I'm a sales manager at FarmDroid. The FarmDroid FD20 is the world's first autonomous seeding and weeding robot. It was designed to help farmers reduce or completely eliminate the need for manual labor in sugar beets. Since then, we have moved on to not only sugar beets, but also other crops like onions, spinach, kale, rapeseed, and different kinds of herbs. Basically, we say that if we can seed it, then we can also weed it. The unique thing about the FarmDroid FD20 is its capability to perform both seeding as well as inter-row and intra-row weeding without a camera system, but only on high-precision RTK GPS. FarmDroid FD20 is fully electric and operates completely CO2 neutral. The solar panels are connected to a battery bank, which ensures up to 24 hours of daily operation. During the day, the solar panels charges the batteries for the night, and if the robot runs out of battery, it will stop, apply its brakes, and continue its work when the sun comes up. The robot doesn't need any external charging, but can be left in the field from when the season starts until it ends. Navigation, the robot uses our own high-precision RTK GPS system. The two antennas, one here in the back and one in the front, is connected to a base station like the one I have here, which is installed at a farm within 10 kilometers of the field where the robot is operating. For the robot to know where to work, it needs to know the corner points of the field as well if there is any obstacles. This will create a geofence for the robot to work with it. The FarmDroid FD20 is a lightweight robot with a weight of only 800 kilos, which ensures it doesn't destroy the microstructure of the soil. It has a variable working width of up to 3 meters and can be configured with 4, 6, or 8 rows of tools. It runs at a low speed, up to 900 meters per hour, which means that the robot can handle up to 6 hectares per day in optimal conditions. The idea of the FarmDroid FD20 is to fight the weeds while they are still small, which is why we recommend one robot for each 20 hectares. One robot can be programmed to work in several fields so that the 20 hectares can be on multiple fields and in multiple crops. The FarmDroid FD20 is designed to work at a slow, steady pace, and because it's lightweight, it will stop within a few centimeters if it comes into contact with an obstacle. If pressure is applied to this safety wire surrounding the robot will stop, apply the brakes, and send a message to the farmer that an emergency stop has happened. It will not be able to run in auto mode before the farmer has manually reset the weeding wire on the robot. Another safety system on the robot is that it's not capable of running outside its geofencing. So if one of the GPS antennas on the robot comes outside the geofence, the robot will again stop and apply the brakes and send a message to the farmer. It will then have to be moved manually back into the field and put in auto mode again by the farmer himself. To be able to perform both inter-row and intra-row weeding without a camera system, we had to design a high-precision seeding system that knows exactly where to place each seed. When setting up the robot creates a perfect seeding pattern over the field, so it knows exactly where each seed is located. The seeding system is able to perform both single seeding, seeding in portions, and also seeding in lines. Distance between the seeds or between the portions can be adjusted to fit the farmer's preferences. Here we have one of the seeding units. On top we have a seed container for the seeds to be filled in. The seed falls from the seed container down to the electrical seed motor in here, and then sends it down this tube, down to the seed valve down here. The seed valve is located only 2 or 3 centimeters above the ground, and from the geometrical pattern we looked at before, the robot knows exactly where to open the valve and where not to. There is an infrared sensor in here that detects if a seed drops. So if a seed doesn't drop, it will send an error message back to the computer in the robot to make sure that we don't have any seeds missing in the field. In the front, we have 2 roller discs here, which is used to cut open the soil. And behind that, we have a furrow opener, which ensures to keep a perfect V-shaped line for the seed to drop into. Behind the seed valve here, we have the seed pressure wheel, which is used to put pressure on the seed and push it down into the wet soil. After seeding, the robot knows the exact position of the seeds. That means it doesn't have to rely on a camera for crop recognition when doing the weeding. The FarmDroid FD20 can perform both blind weeding as well as inter-row and intra-row weeding. The inter-row weeding is performed with these weeding wires here, which is able to cut both smaller weeds but also bigger weeds like thistles. The intra-row weeding is performed with this weeding knife that goes in and out of the row. Because we don't rely on a camera system, we are able to start the weeding process even before the crop is visible. That means that we are able to protect the crop from the weeds, which gives the plants the best possible conditions to fight the weeds. In 2020, the FarmDroid has been running in 7 European countries and more to come next year. The FarmDroid is not only good for the environment, but it also delivers a highly attractive business case with a return on investment down to 2 years. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, please feel free to contact.
All right, so that's the video on there. So now getting over to here, this is what we're talking about with efficiency. So using the FarmDroid, you can eliminate a lot of the people that you have that you're trying to hire, I guess is probably the best way. This machine, you put it in the field, you set it into what you want it to be weeding, and it does it on the regular. You can run it off of your cell phone, you can run it off your laptop. There is one camera on it, just to kind of see where the machine is going. If you wanted to see what's going on, or if it had sent you a text message saying it stopped, you can actually look at the camera to see if you know what the reason was. But it does run 24 hours a day on those off of solar. Now, in certain conditions where you've got overcast on a couple of days, stuff like that, they do have an additional battery pack you can put on these. And you can charge that at home. So if you know you get 2 days in and you're like, I don't think it's going to make it through the night, you can add the battery packs back on, and it'll definitely make it for hours. Cost savings wise, being it's a precision seeder, you're using less seed, you're using less chemical because it's mechanically weeding everything for you, and you're using no fuel because it's using power of the sun, basically. So those are the cost savings that you'll find there. So just to kind of talk about some of the things that we've done. So FarmDroid, we just signed on with them as an importer in January of last year. So we kind of ran with them. We'd never really got the chance to do anything with them. So we went out and we did some demos. So we did onions, rutabaga, beets, carrots, spinach. One of the ones that I was really involved in was one here in central Alberta. It was the Jungle Farm is the name of the farm, and they're a predominant U-pick vegetable farm located in central Alberta. Focusing on spinach cultivation, we implemented the FD20, spacing the plants 4 inches apart with 30 inches in between the rows. Traditionally, the Jungle Farm planted 3 rows, 6 inches apart, the spacing, and 1 to 2 inch spacing in between the plants. They also used a drip irrigation system, which we hadn't. By the 4th week, the excellent performance of the FarmDroid became evident. Not only did our spinach outshine the traditionally planted crops, but we also achieved these results without the need for drip irrigation. And we honestly, it was the FarmDroid that had done it. In the words of our customer, the FarmDroid, as a dedicated machine for seeding and weeding, has been a game changer. We no longer need to deploy a cultivator on our tractor or assign an additional laborer for weeding. FarmDroid has it covered. Talking with him, so his son was kind of the one looking after the FarmDroid, and he knew it was going to rain the following day, and his son was in bed sick. And so he went in there and he said, "Look, we've got to get that thing up and running." And he grabbed his cell phone and turned it on. He said, "Look out the window, Dad. Is it going?" He says, "Yeah, it is." So he says, just that ease of use. Not that you want to do that on the regular basis, but if you need to, that option is there. We do have an app that goes on your phone, and we also have an app that goes on your computer. So you can see all the history of what it's been doing, where it's going, where it's at right at the moment, and turning it on and off. So here's our results. This was week 2 on that first picture, week 3, and then week 4, and then finalized. This is what it ended up looking like. What we found with this, I don't know if you guys can really see it, but over in the far right here, there's actually, you can see where there's a lot of weed pressure. So what we had done, we had planted it here, then we left some weed, just some space open to show the weed pressure, and then back here was where we had the traditionally grown spinach. And like ours produced, I would say 30% better than what the traditional did without the drip irrigation. When you're taking away the weeds before they become a problem, they're taken because the weeds are going to be taken away with moisture and nutrition away from the plants. When you're nipping that in the bud right off the bat, these plants really do grow. They were quite a bit greener than the other ones, and he did find that there was a lot, just the growth, the leaves were quite a bit better than what he had on his traditional way. So that's kind of the things that I've actually done with machine. Mapping, like the other machines, mapping is your crucial point. So when purchasing a FarmDroid from FrontLink, what we're doing is we're actually coming out and we're going to do all the mapping for you. We're going to set up the GPS because each machine comes with its own GPS. So we set that all up, we map out the fields, get you started in seeding, and then kind of let you go with it. We are always there for any information. And we're also looking to set up a dealership, a dealer network in the Lower Mainland and in the Okanagan Valley. So we will have dealers set up there that'll have the parts, the service, and availability. As for right now, you would buy direct off of me, and we at FrontLink would be looking after you. From here on out, we're going to make sure that these dealerships are very well educated on the products, have stock, and can keep everybody going. Pricing. So pricing on these machines, so your initial investment is your higher investment. With our FarmDroids, when you buy the first one, you'll get a home base and a GPS antenna. You'll also get a hitch to be able to hook this onto the 3-point hitch and be of your tractor to be able to move it around. So those three things will come with the initial one. The second one, you can put 20 droids off of one antenna, so you would lose, but you wouldn't have to pay for the $12,000 GPS system. You already have the hitch, so that's another savings there. So initially, a 4-row, 30-inch spacing would be about $140,000 initial cost. Once you own one and you want to buy a second one, that would probably drop down to probably around that $128,000 to $130,000. Now that's 4-row 30. These can be down to as small as 10-inch spacing, 12 rows. Now, when you get into a 10-inch, 12-row spacing, you're looking at closer to the $200,000. So it just depends on what you plan on putting on. We have a 4-wheel option. We have a see and spray system that's going to be coming out this fall. We have a camera system that's supposed to be being released next year. There's a few options that you can add onto these things. So price-wise, the ones that I've sold here in Alberta, we brought 3 in last year. I've got 2 already sold here in Alberta. One I'm actually showing at the Lethbridge Ag Expo here tomorrow, and then it goes off to the customers, and we have 1 left in Quebec. So we are looking to order some more. They take about 2 months to get here, build and or produce and come to Canada. So we do have some availability there. But yeah, I guess that's kind of it in a nutshell. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Mark. That was fantastic to learn more about the FarmDroid. There are a few questions in the chat, so I'll start with those. Jeff was asking, he's got 3 questions actually. The first one is, what is the steepest slope on which the FarmDroid can operate?
Can I stop off of this for a second?
Yeah, can you stop sharing your screen? Perfect, thank you.
There we go. Just want to make sure I get this right. So recommended pitch for operation, no more than 8%, and roll, no more than 5.
Okay. His next question, does it have a moisture sensor to stop operation when soils are too wet, i.e. when it rains?
Yes, yes. So you can set it for different settings, but it does. Up beside the front antenna, there's actually a little dish, and it collects the moisture. As soon as it recognizes a certain amount of moisture, it'll stop, apply its brakes, send you an email and say, I've stopped due to weather conditions. When the weather conditions are good, please turn me back on. So you have to manually fire it back up after it has sensed the water, but they want you to go out to the field, make sure it's good to go.
Fair enough. His third question is, can it deal with 15 to 20 meter tall trees around 2 sides of the field? So does that block a signal, I am assuming he means?
Oh, no, we've never really had any issues with that. It just has to see like in a 30-degree range up into the sky. I've asked the question too, like I was out talking to some producers in BC and with the mountains, like, is that going to make it, the signal not as good? And they said, no, as long as a 30-degree, it can see up into the sky from those globes. On top of that, it also uses cell reception, like to get its location as well. So not only is it looking off the sky, but it's also using your cell towers as well.
We have Christine's asking rough pricing on the unit, which you did share earlier, but it was for the smaller row setting, 4-row, it was around 140,000. Is that right? Yeah.
So like a 4-seater unit, that's we call it a 4-row 30-inch spacing. Something like that would be around 140,000, and that would come with the home base, your GPS, basically set up for the year. And then it kind of depends. Like you can go to a 6-seaters, 8-seaters, all the way up to a 12-seater. So once you get up to the 12-seater, that's where it gets more free.
Okay. Steve, I'll get to you in one moment. I just have someone else in the chat. How about security when it locks? Like, is it easy to be stolen? Like, can you lock it up?
So, number one, you need a hit. Like, it's 950 kilos. So I mean, it's 3,000 pounds. To pick it up, you need the hitch for, and the hitch actually is removed. So when you go and drop it in the field, the hitch comes off. So the only real way that they'd be able to steal it is if they had a, maybe a forklift or something that they could pick it up and go with. But it's 950 kilos and it only goes under 1 kilometer an hour. So if somebody's trying to steal it and run away with it, they aren't going to get very far.
And you hope you might notice it in your neighbor's field maybe as well.
Yeah, exactly. And you can just turn the GPS on and see where it went.
Good point. Traffic.
Yeah.
Okay, good point. Steve.
Yeah, so I'm just curious to know how the solar panels have been operating in Canada. Like, have people who are using them here had to swap out the batteries like regularly to keep it going?
Okay, so I've done everything's been in Alberta, so I don't have the block of the mountain range. So here we've never had an issue running from, like, I think it was just after May long weekend, we dropped it in our first demo and we finished at August. I guess it was towards the end of September was last bit of our demo there. We never had a problem with it running out of power. Now, I've kind of recommended to the dealer that I've been talking to in BC that putting that additional battery pack on for the BC growers is something I think probably is almost a necessity, because you do get a lot more overcast days there. You do have the mountains blocking the sunshine. We get so many hours of sunshine in a day. It's kind of crazy.
I can't remember how many rows were you doing there? It was only a 4-row, right? In Alberta?
Yeah,
so
4 rows of each.
If you go up to a 10-inch spacing 12-row unit, you're likely going to want more batteries, right?
I would. Yeah, definitely, because you got more drag, right?
And
you got the drag and you got more weight on there.
Yeah. And then what is an additional battery pack for that worth?
The battery pack's around $12,000 for the additional pack.
So that's a considerable battery. Can you handle it by hand? Like one person can lift it up and
Yeah. Actually, so they're, I want to say about 35, 40 pounds. Like they're not super light. They're
totally
a little bit of weight there to them, but
so that's
it's actually kind of nice where it sits. It's easy to kind of
get
the lift up.
So that's about 4 or 5 kilowatts. Rough. I mean, if you can pick it up, it's not more than 8 kilowatts, right? Like it's Wow.
Any more questions for Mark? Otherwise, we'll move on. Okay. Thank you so much, Mark. So that's our 2 company representatives. We're going to move into 2 researchers who have done work with the with the FarmDroid too, but that will be reserved for after this next presentation. The next presentation is Elise Smedbol, and she is the head researcher of weed science at the Research and Development for the Agri-Environment Center, and that is URDER in Quebec. And they have been doing trials with the Naïo Oz for the last 3 years in corn, soy, and beans. So let me just bring Elise up. One moment. Okay. Welcome, Elise. Thank you so much.
Hi. Thank you for the invitation. I'll share the presentation. Is it all good for the screen?
We can see it, yeah. You might want to put it in slide format. There you go. Perfect.
Okay, so yeah, my name is Elise. I'm the weed scientist at ERDA. So as Sarah said, we are a research and development institute in agri-environment. And I will talk about some trials that we have done with the Oz robot in horticulture crops. So we are located in southern Quebec. Our research and development institute is located on a 90 hectares organic farm for research purposes. That's where we have done the Oz trials. Just a quick presentation of the lab. So we work on integrated weed management mainly in organic crops. So we work on physical weeding and cultural practices, mainly cover crops and intercropping and how to integrate that with physical weeding. We also work on weed ecology using spatial imagery or omics, mainly genomics, to investigate the weed seed bank, the soil seed bank. And I have to say, I am a French speaker as well, so I apologize in advance if I make any mistakes. Just feel free to ask about more precision. And I also work, we do knowledge transfer mainly about alternative practices to reduce herbicide use. So the Oz trials, they were initiated by Maryse Leblanc. She's the former weed scientist who retired, and I have finished the project. I have done the data analysis and the final report. So these experiments, they were performed between 2020 and 22 on 3 crops. We have done 2 growing seasons per crop, so sweet corn, green bean, and Spanish onions. On a sandy loam, and we looked at weeding efficiency, so basically the amount of weeds before and after the passage. We look at time and costs, and we compare different tool carriers and different weeding tools as well. So for the experiment, we have compared 4 tool carriers. So the Oz robot, a Agri-Tech 2-wheel hoe, so it's a small tool carrier that is pushed by hand. And we have used also a Mazzozzi tractor with a Colt tool carrier, and then manual weeding, so a human tool carrier. For each crop, we have used different tools. So we had tools to weed on the row or between the rows. So for sweet corn, we used spiked harrows, as you can see on the row, at an early growth stage, and then finger weeders at later growth stage, and we finished with hilling up brushes. And between the rows, we used goose foot shears for all passage. So every time we weed the interrow with these shears for sweet corn. For the green beans, the same sequence for weeding tools, but we did not use any hilling up brushes. They don't really like to be hilled up. So we did a few passages with the finger weeders and the goosefoot shears. And then for the Spanish onions, at the beginning of the season, we used the torsion weeders instead. The onions are quite fragile. They don't like the spiked tools. And then the same sequence, and as well the goosefoot shears in between the rows. So I'll present the results for yields and weeding efficiency. It's a few graphs, so if it's not too clear, feel free to ask any questions, or we can talk about it after the presentation as well. So for green beans and Spanish onions, there were no differences between the different tool carriers. So it means that they all performed well. They all had equivalent yields. So all the weeding was done at the right timing, I guess, and there was no differences. So that's a good sign. Any of these tool carriers could be used and we could get good yields. For sweet corn, there was some differences. So here we have the yields in kilogram per hectare, and at the bottom, the different tool carriers for the 2 years that were done in sweet corn. So the Agri-Tech hoe and the Mazzozzi tractor, they yielded less for the 2 years, significantly less than the manual weeding. And Oz was not significant. However, it seemed to be yielding a bit higher than the 2 other tool carriers. Yeah, and it was equivalent to the manual weeding too. So it seemed that the Oz robot in that case contributed to a higher yield in the sweet corn. And so I'll present the results for weeding efficiency mainly on sweet corn, since there were no differences in the yields for the two other crops. And so here we have the weeding efficiency, which is the number of weeds before and after. You can read the graph as 1 is equivalent to 100% weeding efficiency, and 0 would be 0 efficiency. So here's the results for the weeding on the row with the 3 different tools that were used. So 3 passages. And so this first slide is just that overall weeding on the row with the hilling up brushes performed better. So it is the best tool to perform weeding on the row. You will see the weeding efficiency is about 60 to 100% for that weeding tool. So I'm not talking about the tool carriers, just the tool. And if we talk about the different weed tool carriers, so at the bottom you have the 4 that we have used. We can see that the manual weeding is always better. That's normal. It's like a control. So it's like the 100% efficiency tool. But then the Oz robot and Mazzetsi tractor were the best tool carriers after the manual weeding, and they were equivalent. So either Oz or Mazzetsi weeding efficiency was the best. And then the TerraTech hoe was a bit less efficient for all 3 passages with different weeding tools. For the weeding efficiency between the rows, that was performed with the goosefoot shears. So always the same tool for every passage. In this case, we got more variability. So for the first passage, Oz and Mazzetsi tractor also were more efficient as for the weeding on the row. But then for the 2 later passages, Oz robot seemed to be a little bit less efficient than the other tools. We're not sure why, but we think it's either because of the speed. Since the robot goes only to 1.8 kilometer per hour, it's a limited speed. I think it's for security because it's an autonomous robot. Maybe Charlotte will be able to confirm. So it cannot go faster. So sometimes speed helps actually for the weeding efficiency. The Mazzetsi tractor can go a bit faster. And there was also a stability issue. So when we would put heavy tools on the row, like finger weeders, or the tractor was a little bit the robot was a little bit less stable, and so it would go like from one way to another way. So maybe that could lead to a less efficient weeding. But I know this issue was addressed by Naïo. They reinforced the stability by putting a double wheel and things like that. So that's our 2 hypotheses to explain why it would be less efficient between the rows. So weeding with Oz seemed to lead to higher yields in sweet corn. However, it was not significantly different. The weeding on the row is similar to weeding with a Mazzetsi tractor with the tool carrier. But this was not the case in the other crops. So I just wanted to talk about that a bit. Like in green beans, the weeding efficiency on the rows were a bit lower for us. It was similar to the hoe, and the Mazzetsi tractor was more efficient. So, but anyway, it did not have any impact on the yields of green beans, but still, depending on different crops, it could be less efficient. And there were more variability with the weeding between the rows, so a bit less efficient later in the season. And this was the same for the other crops too. So for onions, Spanish onions, and green beans, Oz seemed to be a little bit less efficient later in the season. So it would be because of the two reasons I just explained. So the stability and the speed. And regarding the time of passage and the costs, we did compare the time and the costs are related to it's an hourly wage of $25 per hour. So it's basically just the time that the machine is running. We did that for the 3 crops. So here we have them and the tool carriers. And it's the same for all the crops. It would take a lot more time for the manual weeding in the onions and then the beans and then in the corn. And the Oz robot was second. It would take more time than the 2 other tool carriers, but less than manual weeding. And here it's important to say that we have calculated the time that the machine was running. Even though it's an autonomous robot, it still needs some supervision, and you still have to work a little bit at the beginning on the season on the mapping and all of that. So these things, they take a little bit of time. Sometimes the robot will stop because it loses the GPS signal, so you still need to go into the field and take care of it. So even though you can do some things at the same time that it's weeding, you still need to put a little amount of time into it. So that's how we calculated that. And so because of that, it was a little bit more expensive than the 2 others. The tractor was super fast because the speed is very high, but it was a lot less expensive than the manual weeding, and it took a lot less time. So yeah, there's other economic consideration. This was not a full technical economic study. So we did our weed science, but we're not economists. But there's other considerations such as the cost to buy it at the beginning. There's some fuel or avoided cost of fuel because it's electric robot. So there's a lot other considerations to take into account. And so to conclude on the results of this study, it was as efficient as other tool carriers. One thing that I wanted to highlight is that Naïo offers a very good support service, technical support, because we are used to repair, like sometimes the tools will break, or like we're used to repairing mechanical weeding tools and stuff like that. But with the robots, once they stop in the middle of the field, we're a bit useless. So Naïo was there, they could react very quickly, and they offer a very good support service. So that's very good. And it could be a good weeding device for a small or even medium-sized farm if there is a few units. We did a trial in corn, in a field crops, and it was very slow, very efficient, but very slow. So maybe at that point, you'd want to buy a few units. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate. I'll stop sharing the screen. Okay.
Thank you so much, Elise. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, here we go. I do have one question. I think it's for Elise. It's from Jeff. Has anyone done the projections for when the robots will become cost competitive with the tractor? And maybe this is a question for Charlotte as well. Most leading edge technologies like this have a steep cost drop-off curve that enables them to compete within 5 to 10 years. Does either of you have a sense of that sort of return?
On my side, no. I think a complete analysis should be done to take into account all of these things, but I am not aware if it was done, and we did not do it on our side. Maybe Charlotte.
No, on our side, I would say that it really depends on the use case and the crops and the size of the fields, the the size in between the rows, the number of rows, and so on. So it depends on many things. As Elise was mentioning as well, depends on the cost of diesel and things like this. So we worked on a bit of a ROI tool that is very, very simplified. So we can provide that, but we don't want to make a generalization of it. It's more on a case by case.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I think it's important to take all of this into account when considering to make a purchase. The Maserati tractor that we use is quite expensive as well. So yeah, it's important to consider all of that.
Thank you. Steve is asking how much is the Oz, and Charlotte did speak to that in euros earlier. I received, and you can correct me, Charlotte, I received a quote a year ago for, I think, the whole, all the suite of tools for the Oz, and including support and software, everything in, it was a year ago in April, I think it was just under 50,000 Canadian dollars. Is that about right? It may have.
Yeah. Yes, and exactly. Again, depends on the set of tools and so on, but that would be between 30 to 45. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, I actually have a question, and you may have mentioned this, Elise. I was doing some admin, so I may have missed it, but you said that the Goosefoot tool, you were having, there was troubles there, just, and likely your hypothesis was speed. How are the finger weeders? Did you feel like, I've had a producer who was interested, I was talking with him about it, and he uses these tools, but on other machines, on tractors, and then on walk-behind tractors. But he was thinking that the Oz also wouldn't go fast enough to have an effective finger weeder. That's the question for either of you, actually.
Yeah, well, it's funny because when looking at the results, because I did not perform the trial, so I do not have the experience of it.
Yeah, right.
So when looking only at the results, like we had good results actually with the finger weeders on the row. However, the people that were working on the trials, they told me that they did not perform really well, because we're used to use them with the Maserati tractor. We go at a very higher speed. It is very efficient at high speed. They said it would tend to like drag residues and soil. They would not turn super good, but maybe they were doing like a little bit of a hilling up effect. So regarding the weeding efficiency that we had in our trial, it was good, but they surely did not acted as usually. So yeah.
Charlotte, is that something that you have any experience with?
I would say something. Of course, there is the speed, as Elise was mentioning. Oz can go up to 1.8 kilometers per hour. The other unit can go faster. I know that the finger weeder, for example, are quite effective on Orio or Orio, for example. I think we got very good results thanks to the GPS RTK. So if you have like very, for example, hoeing blades or a goose. Sorry, again, forgot the word. The goose feet. Yeah, sorry. You can get very, very close to the plant as well. I haven't personally experienced the finger weeders myself.
Okay, so it seems like variable in
Yeah.
row. Yeah, results.
Yeah, again, like the quality of the soil as well. Yeah.
Steve.
So is there going to be the ability to hook up powered implements to the Oz? Is that something that may be coming?
So Oz work very well with passive tools. We can work on electric activated tools. Right now, there is nothing on our catalog, but it's something that is coming up. As long as it's electric, I think we can imagine a lot of different things here.
Thanks.
And I know that although we do have the tools that are, again, kind of Naïo approved, because we have been like, testing it and everything like this. We know that farmers can also get very like, creative and do something that sometimes we didn't even think about. So I know that, for example, I've seen some roll of irrigation line that you would put on the hose to drag the irrigation tubes. So again, although it's not like approved and tested by us, I know that there are things out there that have been developed, I would say.
I have another question in the chat. What were the sort of problems experienced when using the Oz, i.e. when Elise spoke of it stopping in the field? Right, so I guess what were the biggest challenges that you found? And then there's a second question to that, but I'll let you answer that first.
I think it's the technology, because if something happens, we cannot do anything, and it's quite heavy. So if it stops in the middle of the field, you have to rely on Naïo's technical service to help you out. We had a problem with the internal computer. It was not good anymore. So we were on a field in another city. So we had to, like, it was a very complicated, like usually with our different tools or tractors, our technicians would just like do some welding, or like we could fix it, but this you can't fix it because it's a computer. So that was the major negative aspect of it, I think. But they were very quick on answering as well. So like there's a good service support, but usually I know producers are in research. We like to be able to do stuff by ourselves, like to make it quickly going like well. And the other thing is the GPS RTK signal. It's not everywhere in Quebec. I don't know in BC, probably it's the same, but at some places we don't get the GPS signal very well. It will stop. Where we are at our research farm, we're near an airport, so we have some issues with the GPS RTK system. So very often the robot will stop. When it loses the signal, it will stop. So then you need to go get on field and restart it. So that can be kind of time consuming if you have like a big area to cover, or you still need some supervision. So that would be the two major things.
Mm-hmm. It seems like a broader issue with technology in general across all kinds of industries, is like as we move forward in technology, it's less accessible to those of us like the lay people.
Yeah.
The second part to that question was on average, how long was set up at the beginning of the season? I mean, I guess for the first year and then for subsequent seasons as well.
Yeah. It's actually quite fast. It's like only a few hours, to be honest. You can put the antenna on the seeder, so it will directly do the mapping when you're sowing. So that's the most efficient way. Otherwise, you can use the antenna to take GPS points on the rows, on one row, and then it will provide a map. It's quite fast, I would say. Like this last year, we did a trial and we got set up. It took us like 1 day to set up the map. We did not use the seeder, so we did it by hand with the GPS points, and then we were able to perform the treatment in the afternoon. So it took us only 1 day to get the map done, and so it's quite fast. It's just sometimes you'll need to redo the map because you need to have the good precision, but it's quick. 1 day maximum of work.
Right. Steve.
Yeah, I think this is a question for Charlotte. If a person were looking at getting one of these, is there an app or a system that you could use to check your property for GPS signal availability?
So what I know that has been done in the past is to take the antenna, so the orange box that really is like this, and test it on your field. That's really possible, because like you can detach it from the robot.
Right.
Is there something that exists out there before you were to purchase it to know, or before you have access to the machine, so that you actually know if you have enough signal to make it a viable option?
That's a good question. I think also because we work with the network, I'm pretty sure there is some maps also available where where the coverage is good or things like this. I can do a bit of digging on this side, but we work with quite common network supplier, so that would be, I think, really easy to check.
Okay. We have another question from Ariella. Go ahead, Ariella.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Just a sort of bit more of a follow-up with my previous question in the chat. I'm just wondering how long on average the setup was at the beginning of each meeting session as well. Elise mentioned it took a bit of setup at the beginning of each session, and I'm just wondering, like, was it half an hour? Was it 10 minutes? Was it an hour?
I'm not sure I understood well.
I think
so, so for example, if you were going to weed one day and you needed to set up the Oz, how long would it take on that one day? Like, you've already done the pre-season setup.
Okay,
how long would it take to do one setup or set up for one session of weeding?
If the setup is already done, you already have your map and everything, it's very fast. It's just a matter of putting the tools on the toolbar. If you have only one crop that you're weeding into it, you can just leave it there and you'll just have to take it out of the garage and it can start weeding right away. Otherwise, you need to do the different setup for your crops. That usually it's the same for any mechanical weeding tool carrier. Like there's quite a few work doing the setup with the tools, but once it's done, it's very easy. It just goes out of the garage and that's it.
So even if you did different crops, if it had the same spacing, it would just keep going.
Yeah, then you'll need to, if you want to change between different crops and use different tools, you'll just need to remove the tools. But it's very easy. You don't need a specific tool to take off the tools. It's all like it's user friendly. It's very easy. It doesn't take a lot of time. But all of this you need to to make sure it's good at the beginning. You need to follow up a bit the robot and make some adjustments so it's not too close to the rows and stuff like that. But it doesn't take a lot of time.
Great. Steve, you have sorry.
Sorry,
no, you go ahead.
The thing with the autonomous robot is that if you made a bad tool adjustment, it could weed your crops. So I mean, you need to be careful about that because it will just keep going. Yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I'm curious about charging it. Is it fairly straightforward? Does it return to home at the end of the job and you just plug it in? That's it.
Yeah, you just plug it in. We used it for how long? I would say at least 5 hours in a row, and we had no problem with we didn't need to change the batteries. We bought an extra pack of batteries so we could change it on field. But we have the battery charger, but usually we could weed the whole, like all of our experimental plots and just go back to the garage.
About how many acres was that?
In acres.
Or however.
It was a trial in field crops. It was in corn. It was like a 200-meter long field, and we did how many rows? 12 rows. So that would I'm not sure how I could. If you want, I could calculate maybe and tell you how long it would take us, like a few hours. But I can give you more detail if you want.
Yeah, that's pretty good. So that would do that in around 6 hours then at runtime. 4 to 6
at 1.8 kilometer per hour.
Yeah, and how sensitive to the soil moisture was it? Like
it's not at all. It has no sensors, so it's just weeding. So you have to check that. it's not going. I don't think it's a good idea to let it out in the rain. So you have to check like the field conditions, the same as if you would go with another type of mechanical weeding tool carrier. You have to do the thinking. It's not a thinking robot. It's just a weeder.
Gotcha.
Jeff has just added some links in the chat for everyone. Well, I did as well. I had copied it. He sent it directly to me. But to answer your question, Steve, about signal, like there's some links there to figure out what kind of signal for GPS RTK network. Someone is, I'll find you and put you on mute, but if you realize that you are not muted, please do mute yourself. Thank you so much. We're going to move on. There's going to be a chance for some more questions at the end for sure. But I'm going to, so thank you so much, Elise. That was amazing. I feel like there's quite a lot of interest in my sort of farming community around the Oz robot as well, which is, I think it fascinates a lot of us. So Kevin Vanderkoy is speaking next up, and he is at the University of Guelph in the Department of Plant Agriculture. And he and his colleagues have been doing some trials with the FarmDroid, which Mark just spoke to, and also with the Naïo Orio, which is the larger model to the Oz for vegetables, mostly for vegetables. But I do hear it can be adapted to different kinds of crops, which I'd love to ask you questions about later, Charlotte. So I will just get you up here, Kevin. Hold on one second. Perfect. All right.
Can everyone hear me?
We can indeed. I'm going to put you on spotlight there. Hold on. Sorry, I thought I did, but I did not. Oh, yeah, you're a spotlight. Okay, perfect. Good to go.
All right. Well, thank you for inviting me to speak today. I'm going to give an update on our use with both the FarmDroid and the NOS, or the Naïo Oz, or sorry, Orio robot in vegetable production on high organic matter soils conducted in the Holland Marsh area in Ontario. This is part of a project that has been funded by the University of Guelph and the Ontario government, along with some of our other sponsors. This was year one of a 3-year project to look at how we can implement these robots in our area. So just to give you a quick outline, so we're located in the Holland Marsh. We run on basically 50 to 80% organic matter. Drainage began in the 1920s. We have about 7,000 acres in the Holland Marsh, and then there's a few thousand acres in different pockets that are sort of located just north and a little bit east of us as well. And we grow about 40% of Canada's carrots, mostly on raised beds, mostly used for retail packaging and also for institutional use in restaurants and food service, things like that. So oversized carrots, like the one that you see one of my colleagues holding, is what we predominantly grow. And then we also grow about 40% of Canada's cooking onions, again, grown for storage, marketed throughout the winter, mostly sold to retail stores as well. So weeds, here you can see this is one of our trials from previous years, is a big problem. We do all the crops in our area use conventional pesticides for weed control. However, with that, we still end up with big weed problems from time to time. So robots is one of the ways that everyone's interested in trying to utilize them. But there's hundreds of robots. These are sort of just a few pictures that my colleague Jeff has found. So there's all different kinds of robots and have all different kinds of uses and spaces. And we're trying to figure out which ones might be best for us. We kind of think of it as the car manufacturing industry, where when they started out, there was hundreds of car manufacturers, but today they're concentrated to a very few. And we're trying to figure out, of those hundreds of robotic companies, which ones will work out the best for our area, or which will be the sort of the winners in the long run in terms of how they fit in the markets. So looking at some of the trials we ran in 2023, this has sort of been talked about. So we looked at the Orio robot from Naïo. We look at it as an autonomous tool carrying robot. So you can put many different functions on its 3-point hitch. Its 3-point hitch has about a 500 kilogram weight capacity in terms of lifting power. They're fully electric, charge on lithium batteries. I know we talked about earlier, ours took a welding plug, basically had about 10 hours of runtime, and it took about 10 hours to charge as well. All 4 wheels drive and all 4 wheels steer. As Charlotte mentioned, it does go about 5.5 kilometers an hour and weighs about 1,400 kilograms. The thing that we liked about it is that it was very adaptable, and we wanted to use things that we already had available to us, what our growers were using on their tractors, and wanted to adapt them to a robot. So we talked about the precision. Elise just talked about, so if you look on the left, all these orange markers, or yellow markers, sorry, were measured at 1.75 meters, which is our bed. And then we went through with the GPS globe and then marked exactly where each of those marks was. And then the robot, as it drove, you could see it hit exactly where we wanted it to. And this is an onion trial that we ended up transplanting without GPS, but we used the robot to make the lines and then tried to drive as straight as possible following that. And then here, seeding carrots, again, we don't have GPS on our tractors, but we used the Orio as a little buddy. He came ahead, made the marks for us, and then we followed with the seeder behind. Orio, Naïo supplied us with a hitch. As you can see in the top, the gray thing on the top was a camera guided hitch from Tillett and Haag. Used a camera to identify the rows, and then we attached some existing equipment that we use for our tractor mounted equipment, that an in-row cultivator to go between the carrots and the beets that we were growing. As you can see here on the left, there's a camera mounted on the top, and then the Tillett and Haag camera, which it used to identify the crop from the weed. So it knows where the crop is in relation to sort of follow the straight line that the crop makes. Excuse me. And you can see here the tool carrier cleaning up the weeds in between the rows. One of the downsides of this is that we couldn't get very close to the weeds. We were using herbicides, but we have a big problem with weeds in general. And the robot did its best to sort of stay on top of it, but we still have some work to do in sort of getting closer to the crop in terms of trying to get all the weeds that we could. A lot of our growers use sort of in-row spraying, sort of with a tractor that they use to sort of spray some of the weeds in between the rows of the crop with a band sprayer. So we actually built a band sprayer to be carried by the robot. It had 2 different booms on it, one to spray over the rows, and then one to spray under the buckets here. This was more of a proof of concept, using these the buckets as a way to shield the crop from the chemical. More of a proof of concept, sort of an idea. But we used a Raven computer system to, excuse me, to apply the right rates of chemicals to either underneath the buckets or over the row. So it was very complex and sort of having the computer system operate both the GPS for the robot, but then also a different unit operating the spraying system as well. And then we also used it to spray some fungicides and fertilizers once the crop was growing later on in the season. If you look here over top of the yellow lights in the center, that orange and gray beacon, that's the GPS signal, which, as Charlotte mentioned, is detachable, and you can carry to mark out your individual rows in the field. Just to review, it is able to integrate several other technologies. As you can see on the screen here, we ended up with a lot of different computer screens to make sure that everything worked properly. It's very adaptable to existing tooling that you have. Making the maps are fairly straightforward. I know some people were asking questions about how long it takes. It took us a long time to get everything figured out. Once you got it figured out, it did work well. But this is why we're doing the research, hopefully that we can get some of these things straightened out and make it more streamlined for people when they do become more available in the marketplace. We did have some issues with software. Access to support was good. However, people are in France or in other regions. We were dealing with some other people in California. So things did take some time at some different periods during the season. And there is always a learning curve with new technology that is part of doing the research, that it doesn't always work out as easily as you would like, or happen as quickly as you would like sometimes. Moving on to the FarmDroid, as Mark said, it's a seeding and weeding robot. It has the ability to geotag every seed, and it does both intra and inter-row weeding, row weeding. It does go very slow, less than 1 kilometer an hour, 100% solar powered, and relatively lightweight. And what we did with this in 2023 is we compared the weed control and yield of a 7-acre onion field that we did with a grower cooperator. So he let us have 7 acres of his field, which we've seeded over 3 days. It took us 3 days to seed 7 acres. We were able to run virtually 24 hours a day. The only time it stopped was when the sensor found something. We have quite a few because it was a swamp at one point. There we have wood that's throughout the field, and the seed sensors that was in the video, they did get clogged, and then it shut itself off, and we had to go out there to the field to make sure that it got back up and running. We are virtually able to seed 24 hours a day. The only time we stopped it was we used the app to determine when it was at the front or back of the field to fill it up with seed as it was going to go through the night. So when it was convenient to fill it, we did that. We did a couple different experiments with that, not in the grower field, but on our research site. We looked at the single row. We seeded a single row of onions spaced 3.4 centimeters apart. As they talked about in that video, it's very precise. We picked exactly that measurement to get the spacing that we want. And then, as you can see on the left here, that disc, it would open and close that valve in order to get the seed at the exact spacing. We compared that to our conventional spacing, where we have 5 centimeters between seed in a double row. And then we also wanted to try a triple cluster with the FarmDroid, where we seeded 1 seed sort of every 12 centimeters apart, similar to how we do our transplant onions, where we seed 3 seeds, put 3 seeds in a cell and plant them about 12 centimeters apart. On our high organic soils, the onions do tend to move around. And as you can see with the triples, even though they're all in one spot, they did move around. And even with our single row, we did end up with some pushing of the onions from side to side. As you can see here, here's the different seeds per meter that the single and the triple did, about 25 to about 17, and our conventional end up a little bit higher than we probably would have liked, about 35 seeds a meter with the traditional seeding method. When you look at the yield, however, our yield was fairly similar between all three seeding methods. However, the size distribution of the triple seeded, as you could see from the picture that I showed previously, they were much higher, much larger onions in the triple seeded method than compared to the conventional, had much more medium-sized onions. However, the overall yield was similar between all of them. Why does this make a difference? Well, mostly because you get paid more. You get high returns for the larger crop, and it's advantageous to try to get as big a bulbs as possible. We also wanted to look at the speed. As I said, it took about 3 days to seed 7 acres, which isn't really as efficient as possible. And that worked out to about 200 meters per hour. We took the robot back sort of midsummer after it was done working in the field and tried seeding the onions at 4 different speeds. And as you can see, as we sped up, our sensor couldn't keep up with the amount of seeds that were coming through, and ended up with a lower plant stands than when we seeded slower. The problem with once the error rate goes up, the robot will turn itself off because it thinks there's a mistake happening, and it won't continue. And if you increase sort of the error rate, then you're not sure what's happening. So we wanted to keep it on a level where we were comfortable at. However, then the number of seeds that you end up seeding does decrease as you increase the speed. And here are some pictures that you can see the FarmDroid working. So we had a 3-wheeled unit seeding 4 rows on a 1.75 or a 68-inch bed. When we look at the yield from our grower's field, comparing the FarmDroid and the conventional, you can see we seeded virtually the same number of seeds, had virtually the same marketable yield as well, and had the same number of percent marketable. So these are all good things. There wasn't a very big difference. We were very worried when we seeded 7 acres with a piece of equipment that we'd never tested before about what was going to happen. But the grower was very interested in having the FarmDroid in his field and seeing what it could do. You can see here the weeding units and the onions in the background. We ended up in a spot of the field that had quite a few perennial weeds, both sow thistle and marsh cress, which got caught up on our weeding tines and really decreased the efficiency of the weeding tools. And when we look at how well it weeded, we didn't not spray chemicals on this. We treated everything. The fields were the robotic seeded field was treated the same as the conventional. We didn't feel comfortable having the FarmDroid replace conventional practices completely, but we wanted to see what would happen. So if you look at the thistle, we had much more thistle in our robotic plots, and also pigweed and marsh cress. So our weeding efficiency wasn't where we wanted to be, and we want to look at some different tooling in 2024. Also move locations, so we ended up with a few less of these perennial weeds and concentrate more on just on the annual weeds, hopefully. We also ran into a few issues as the crop gets bigger. You're not able to go through the crop. The bar sort of behind the tire started knocking over the onions, and that third wheel started running over the onions as well. And like I said, we were going to get a modification to this robot to to include a fourth wheel, so that it can drive sort of on the outside of the bed. So some of the highlights from the seating of the FarmDroid, it was very accurate. It has a large seat capacity. Our issue was not being able to hold enough seed. We were able to have enough seed to run through the night, check on it again in the morning. It ran for over 20 hours a day. I know other people had some questions about sunlight and things like that. We didn't run into any issues. Sort of, we see the beginning of May, there's lots of light available. We're sort of in the highest daylight hours, sort of coming when the robot will be used. And this robot also does not have the battery packs. It ran totally on solar power. The app does give you progress you can watch as it's going. You can see here on the right, this is the map that the robot is giving. The little green arrow shows you where exactly it is in the field, so you could time when you wanted to go fill it up. We did end up with, like I said, dealing with those perennial weeds. We are not going to use the same tooling that came with. FarmDroid's also partnered with Colt, and we'll be getting some Colt design tools. We're also going to put some shields in place to help protect the onions from the soil going back over top of it when they're very small. The GPS unit on the front of the unit, currently we had to use that to make all four corners, which means we had to drive the robot with the hitch to all four corners, which did take a long time. Currently there is an upgrade that it'll be in a handheld unit that we can make the field map prior to seeding, which should help make that easier as well. And here's sort of the future work. Go to 4 wheels, improve the tooling. We're looking at optimizing the seeding methods. We're going to repeat this in the grower's field. We're going to seed the whole trial using the triple spacing, so hopefully we can speed that up and seed a little bit quicker than we did last year. For the Orio, we are going to compare our results to the tractor. It did take a long time to get everything set up with both the front hitch, the sprayer, the computers, things like that. In 2023, which we have now all figured out, and hopefully we can be a lot more efficient in how we get everything set up this year. We did look at putting a seeding unit on this as well. I don't think that'll happen currently. We are trying to look at working in onions and other crops as well. Some of the other things we've looked at as part of this project as well. This is a Paqueta lens, which we hope at some point could be put onto a robot to look at nutrient levels on your crop. Lens stands for Leaf Elevated Nutrient System. It was developed in New Brunswick. It estimates the nutrient contents for both micro and macronutrients. We're building a model currently for onions. The Paqueta folks out in New Brunswick have built an actual working unit for potatoes that is they're currently marketing, and the algorithms that they've produced are accurate. Everything's been compared to lab samples, and part of the work that we're doing is to build the model for onions. So we sampled 250 samples of onions. We hope to do the same thing this year to help get that model ready for use in onions. All this work has been done as part of a ag-robotics working group that was started in Ontario by Chuck Barasich of Haggerty Creek and Kristen Obeid from the Ontario government, our horticulture weed specialist. And the idea of the working group was to foster a relationship between government, academic organizations, government, to advance new technologies in Ontario. However, there's members from across Canada We have 100+ members right now of the working group. And part of what we're trying to do is develop a way to test the new technology for the industries in Ontario. This here is a picture of our demonstration day we held in 2023. We had about 75 participants help come visit us, where we saw the Orio and the FarmDroid. And some of the other things that the working group has been working on is autonomous weed scouting, looking at lima beans for a processing company. Currently, there are no herbicides to take out some of the weeds. They wanted to use robotics to identify where the weeds were, so that they could avoid harvesting those areas. Right now, that's sort of the state of that project. We also looked at the Nexus goat, which is a Canadian company. They are looking at, this is an autonomous weeder. They've had success with it in Arizona in the winter of 2023. They looked at it in Ontario in 2023 as well, in a leaf lettuce and spinach grower, where it removed 80% of the weeds, and the grower was very pleased. So these are two of the projects that the working group has worked on. The working group has also looked at the Naïo TED in grapes, and the Korechi Romaio HCW, which is a autonomous tool carrier, which they had a row mower going through orchards. So these are all parts of different projects of the working group. This is some of the other robotics that are in Ontario. This is a laser weeder from Carbon Robotics. It uses lasers to shoot weeds. However, the cost is about 2 million Canadian, with about a $50,000 technical fee. And I think that's the end. I'd like to thank Haggerty Ag-Robotics, OMAFRA, and our Ontario Agri-Food Alliance, and our participating growers and our whole crew at the research station for all the work they've done on this project. And I'll take any questions.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I'll certainly start moderating questions in a minute. I think we'll open it up to questions to everyone as well. We have about technically 4 minutes left of the session. I am also right now popping a link to a quick survey in the chat. It's like 3 questions, very simple, very helpful for us and our funders to know how the session went for you. But does anybody have any questions they would like to ask Kevin specifically, or anyone else? And I do have a couple of questions lined up from earlier for other presenters as well. I have a question actually myself about the Orio. It seems like it's a machine that you have your base model, and then you can just add so many different kinds of tools to, like, either you're just using it autonomously with traditional cultivating tools, or as you're doing there, you're attaching sprayers, you're attaching cameras, so then you're turning it into sort of camera guided, instead of just relying on the GPS signal, that kind of thing. Like, you can just add so many different things.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that we like about it, was the ability to not only put existing tooling that you might already currently own, but there's also many options that you could put out there as well.
Got it. Can you stop sharing your screen? That would be fantastic. And then we can go to the group and see if anyone has any questions. Fantastic, thank you. I have a couple of questions from earlier from some people. Jacob was asking earlier, particularly, I think it was a question for Charlotte, specifically about the Orio, I think. What is required for programming the steering to make sure that it stays on tracks? Do we need to be planting with R2K? I mean, I think yes is the answer, correct?
Yeah, it would make your life easier to plant it with RTK before, definitely. Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
So we had that same issue, is that our
Mm.
tractors don't have our RTK, so we had to use the robot to make the rows and then try follow as closely behind it as possible. Which
That was, yeah. Right.
depending on what type of crop you have, we're looking at, we had lots of tolerance, so we were afraid of running over the crop that we had seeded, but that is something to consider.
Okay.
There is also some different techniques. So, for example, if you want to seed with your tractor, then we can also build an arm that you would attach to your seeder, record the track, and then put the track back into the robot. So there is some technique to make it work.
Okay. And then Preet had asked earlier, and I think it was just after Mark had spoken, so I assume he's talking to the FarmDroid, but they can maybe speak up and let me know if they're wrong. They were asking if it could be used with tree fruits, but I think the FarmDroid cannot. Is that correct? I just wanted to... Anyone tried in organic tree fruits in BC for weeding? I'm not sure if that's asking, like, are there other tools for tree fruits? I think the Naïo Joe is good for that. Is that correct, Charlotte?
It could be. Really depends on what you want to do. Like, so do you want to weed in between the trees? You know, how big the canopy is, and so it depends really on the use case. As I was mentioning a bit earlier, for example, blueberries, Joe, the crawler could be a good fit, and that would be one of the options. That would be possible technically to weed with Oz or Orio, or even TED if it's tree nursery, for example. It really depends on what you want to do, and as Kevin was mentioning as well, because there is, for example, on Orio the 3-point hitch, then you can achieve a lot of different things.
Okay, excellent. We have one question from someone who comes up as owner, so go ahead, owner.
Yes, just wondering what the carrying capacity turned out to be for the Orio for the liquids. Just looked to me like maybe it was just 100-gallon tank. Was it bigger than that?
No, so we had 2 50-gallon tanks on there, which is roughly the capacity of the of that. We sized them to fit the capacity of the unit.
Excellent. We're going to need to wrap it up. If we could take probably another question, if anyone has another question. In the meantime, I was going to share my screen just to let people access that. Sorry, let me just get this. To access the survey I mentioned earlier via QR code as well. I'm just going to pop that up on the screen so people who are still here can look at that. And then in the meantime, I just wanted to thank everyone, all the presenters for coming, and for all the information, all of the participants for coming. I'm going to send an email after the session this afternoon with various different links that are helpful. And if anyone has any questions in the meantime, after that, then please just ask me for information, and I can set you up with the information that you're looking for. Final chance for questions. Okay, great. And then my last slide, I just wanted to let people know that, Organic BEC was hosting this. If you wanted to learn more about what we're doing in the different events, you can go to organicbc.org/join. We will be hopefully this year, this coming growing season, running some demonstrations, hopefully with some of the tools that we've been talking about today on various different farms in different settings across BC. So I'll keep everyone posted about that. But a good way to be on the forefront of what's happening in regards to that is to jump onto our newsletter, which you can do so through our website.